let me just make sure that I can control the slides here. All right. Okay. So John, is that you controlling the slides?
I gave you the mouse. Can you click through?
I'm not really able to do it, no. Let's see.
Okay, I will go ahead and control it for you.
Okay, you can just leave it right there for now.
Okay.
So good morning, everyone, and welcome to NEH 101, Funding Opportunities and Resources for Grant Applicants. Thank you, John and Cal Humanities, for organizing this event. And thanks to all of you for tuning in. My name is George Lazopoulos, as John said. I'm a Senior Program Officer in the Division of Public Programs at the NEH, and I'm joined by my colleague, Senior Program Officer Jill Austin, also Public Programs, and our contact info is up on this slide there, and it'll be up on the screen again at the end. And I think John mentioned it'll be on throughout. Next slide. Thank you. We're here today to give you a very brief introduction, I think about 30 minutes or so, to the different, to the different types of grants offered by the NEH. And after our presentation, we'll have time for some Q&A as well, as John said. And here you can see up on the screen there how we're going to proceed in 3 parts. First, I'm going to give you a general overview of the agency. If you can just go back to the last slide.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yes, okay. There we go. We're going to give you a general overview of the agency, and then we'll shift into a discussion of some, not all, of the individual grant types offered by the agency. And then we'll wrap up with some tips for putting together a proposal before we open it up to questions. Okay, so a few words about the agency. The National Endowment for Humanities is a federal agency currently under the leadership of John Parrish-Peedy, our chairman. The NEH was established by the National Foundation on the Arts and Humanities Act in 1965 to support the advancement of the humanities in the US. And here you can see a picture of Lyndon Johnson signing our founding legislation. Next slide, please. And I think we skipped that. No, we didn't. Okay, so here by humanities, as defined in our 1965 legislation, you know, the humanities are very difficult to define, but we in the agency sort of use this definition of the humanities as based on the disciplines. So history, literature and language, history and the theory of the arts, philosophy and ethics, archaeology, comparative religion, jurisprudence, and social sciences employing humanistic methods. Next slide, please. And here also from our founding legislation is the mission of the NEH, which is to strengthen teaching and learning, facilitate research and original scholarship, provide opportunities for lifelong learning, preserve and provide access to cultural and educational resources, strengthen humanities institutions, nurture new ways to do and disseminate scholarship, and support state and local humanities engagement. Next slide, please. In addition to this, this formal mission stipulated in the legislation, we have some other, not requirements, but what we call agency-wide encouragements, things that we hope to see when we receive our applications. And these are projects that serve, reach underserved populations, projects that explore and capture Native American history and culture. And this third one is our recent addition. It's called A More Perfect Union. And this was brought out in preparation for the US semi-quincentennial in 2026. A More Perfect Union, this initiative provides funding for humanities projects that promote a deeper understanding of American history and culture, and projects that advance civic education and knowledge of our core principles of government. Okay, next slide, please, John.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the agency currently has 7 offices and divisions to carry out this mission. And each of these divisions offer grant support for different types of humanities-related projects. And just very briefly to run through these include scholarly research. These include the development of skills and materials for teaching the humanities in formal classroom settings, support for the building of institutional capacity and infrastructure, the development of digital technology for use in humanistic work, the maintenance and access to humanities-related archives, and coordinating with state-level humanities councils like Cal Humanities throughout the country. So from here, going forward in our presentation, we're going to go through the divisions one by one and talk about the specific functions within the agency and some of the upcoming grants that they offer. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the first division we're going to highlight right now is public programs, which is where Jill and I work. Public programs supports projects that bring the humanities to a general public through a wide range of formats. There are kind of two defining features of all the projects that we fund in public programs, regardless of what the format is. And the first one is its scholarly grounding. The subject matter, may or may not be humanistic, but the analytical framework or interpretive lens that a project puts on that subject matter must be humanistic. And this framework or lens must be grounded in humanities scholarship and informed by a team of scholar advisors. That's number one. Number two, that scholarly content must be presented in a way that is accessible to and engaging for a general public audience. These are the kinds of the hallmarks of the NEH public program supported projects. And now we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so here are the grants that we have coming up in the near future. The deadline for all of these up there is August 12th. I think the public humanities projects might be delayed a little bit. If it's changed, it won't be sooner, it will be later. But we have three here to show you. The first one, the media grants. These are grants that support documentary films, podcasts, and radio. And they're available at two funding levels. At the development level, which supports media projects at kind of the beginning or the research conceptualization stages, we have funding available up to $75,000. And at the production stage, production level rather, for projects that are ready to actually begin production, applicants can ask for up to $650,000 for production level grants. We also have a separate category for short documentaries that supports films that are under 30 minutes long. And for these, we offer $60,000 for a single film and up to $250,000 for a series of films. And at the moment, we are only accepting applications in short docs that speak to the More Perfect Union initiative encouragement. In addition to these two, media grants and short docs, we also have, coming up on August 12th, public humanities projects. And these are projects that are for in-person types of projects. These are museum exhibitions, historic site interpretations, and humanities discussions. And these are also available at two different funding levels. The lower level, again, is for kind of conceptualization and research. It's called the planning level. And up to $75,000 is available at planning. And for implementation level, for projects that are ready to sort of go live very soon, we have $400,000 cap on that. Okay, and again, those are all due August 12th, with the exception possibly of public humanities projects. That might change, we're not sure right now. And John, if you can show me the next slide. Okay, the next division I'm going to turn to now is the Division of Research, which I think might have the best known grants in the agency. These awards are primarily for scholars, and there's a wide range of types of award available for scholars here. I'll just highlight the ones that whose deadlines are coming up. You can see them up there right now. The first one, we go back to the other one, John. Yeah,
Sorry,
let's stay here.
sorry. Let me there's some tech glitches with the slides. I'm sorry. I'm not the one clicking through. So I'm trying.
Oh,
I apologize for that.
okay. Okay. So the first upcoming grant in research is due August 12th, and this is the fellowship programs at independent research institutions. Okay, just a second. I lost my place here. And these are for institutions to provide fellowships devoted to advanced study and research in the humanities in the U.S. and abroad that foster communities of intellectual exchange among the participating scholars and provide access to resources that might not otherwise be available to the participating scholars. And up to $375,000 is available for that first grant. The second grant, summer stipends, due October 14th. These are for scholars with the end goal of producing a book or an article or a digital publication, an archaeological report, or some other scholarly resource for a period of 2 months to receive $6,000. And the third one there, the public scholars one, this is kind of interesting one, due January 14th of next year. This is to support the creation of nonfiction books in the humanities written for a general broad public. Most of the stuff that is supported in research is for, intended for a scholarly audience, but not this grant. This is for a general audience. And there's sort of two tracks within this. One is to encourage non-academic writers to deepen their engagement with the humanities by strengthening their research. And the other one is for academic writers, professional academics in the humanities, to write for a not primarily academic audience, a general audience. And this grant program is for a period of 6 to 12 months at $5,000 per month. And at this point, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Jill to talk about the remaining divisions and offices. So take it away, Jill.
Here we go. Hello, everyone. I'm just going to continue. If we could go back to that prior slide for digital humanities. John, I wonder if this was somehow set up or uploaded as a PowerPoint show rather than a PowerPoint slide. I don't know. Sometimes that happens with the slideshow, that it ends up changing automatically.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. So I'll click through and I realize that I'm going to pause it every time we go through the slide.
Makes it extra exciting. So the next division that I'll start speaking to is the Office for Digital Humanities. And I should also mention that we're including the general email address for each of the divisions along these introductory slides as well, so you can look them up on the website and also reach out to them directly if you like. So Digital Humanities is a division that is really looking to support innovative work in terms of digital access that will help further research and searchability for crowdsourcing, for scholarly work. And so they're really looking for something that's going to really enhance the field from the back end. They also do support some public-facing projects, such as some new tools for interactivity in museums, for example, or online access to to public resources in that way. And so, if you're interested in this, I would really look at their guidelines and specifics in terms of what they fund versus what public programs funds. Next slide, please. So the one big deadline that is coming up for digital humanities this summer, August 17th, is for the Fellowships Open Book program. And this is a very specific program for authors, scholars, and publishers who have received an NEH grant supporting that work within the past 3 years. And so there are very specific requirements for this program. I think you should have received an NEH award under the HBCU program, tribal universities and tribal colleges and universities as well. Also, the Japan Research Support Program through the Division of Research as well. So there are some very specific parameters for this. And again, I would reach out and look on the landing page for digital humanities in this deadline. If there are people attending today from universities and scholars who have recently received an NEH award, I would look to that. Next slide, please. And then another major division at NEH is the Division of Preservation and Access, and those who are working in archives, museums, and library collections know this well. This division supports so much behind-the-scenes work that does ensure continued public access and preservation of humanities resources. So that's always a thread, as George outlined at the beginning of the presentation, the support of the humanities as well as the access. So here, this is really the place to go if you're looking for heavy-duty collections, care work, and preservation. Also migrating of different formats, digitization. That's where that comes in, including still images, moving images, works of art, and other kinds of digital collections. We've got the general phone number here for preservation and access, but I guess given that we're all working from home, I would advise that the best course of contact for all of these divisions, including preservation and access, is to go through the email pages. Next slide, please. There are many deadlines in preservation and access that are coming up for the fall and early 2021. The first one coming up on September 15th is Documenting Endangered Languages, which mainly supports Indigenous languages and other native languages across the globe. That's a really critical program. And then coming up in January, the turn of the new year, is Sustaining Cultural Heritage Collections. And this is another landmark program for preservation and access for collections, care, and preservation, rehousing of major cultural heritage collections. And this can also include digitization. So those are for some pretty hefty numbers of artifacts or works of art and objects that need that kind of care. Also on January 14th, they're offering the smaller PAG grants, the popular PAG grants, preservation assistance grants for smaller institutions. And these are small grant amounts for a small collection, really to get someone to come in, do a conservation assessment perhaps, think about creating a strategy for rehousing or doing some different work in terms of processing or care, even perhaps photography of a smaller collection. And so the award amounts for preservation assistance grants tend to range somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000. We do award a lot of them every year. And then the next one that's coming up sooner for preservation and access is the National Digital Newspaper Program that so many institutions across the country participate in. The next deadline for that is February 11th. Next slide, please. And another important division is education. And I'm sure many of you know this division well as well. The contact information is at the bottom of the screen. And education supports humanities education through teacher training and curriculum development and professional development mainly. And these are aimed for educators who work K through 12 and also in higher education, colleges and universities. And people often have questions about this division in terms of what they offer, and do they support more public programs for programs that directly work with students and children. And they do indirectly. So it is not the case that they support direct programming with students. It's really that they are supporting the teachers. And so they have terrific terrific grant programs, all through the year that really do get the benefit of top-notch scholarship down to the K-12 level and college education level as well. Next slide. Great, thank you. So coming up September 16th, you could prepare for Humanities Connections, and this is a great program that originated through the Division of Challenge and is really aimed at drawing upon universities and their relationships with the different communities that they have in the area and educators to develop new kinds of programming and new partnerships. So that's coming up. I would also encourage you to go directly to that landing page and check that out. And I'll have a little bit more information about that in our website in a moment. Then looking to 2021, we've got the ever popular Summer Seminars and Institutes program that do support training and continued education for K-12 educators, which is so critical, as well as opportunities for training for higher education faculty. And those are planned in advance for really deep dive into a particular topic or theme for that kind of summer training during their break. The next 2021 deadline for education, again, is a really popular program, Landmarks of American History and Culture. That deadline is March 2nd of 2021. And this is another one that supports scholars really translating their most recent research and findings and writings to higher education, as well as elementary and secondary teachers, to get the latest in research made accessible ultimately for their students. Next slide. So here we are with the website, a little tour of our website. So if you're looking for any of these grants and divisions that George and I have mentioned today, you can go to NEH.gov, which is our website, and at the top you'll see that the yellow box is highlighting grants at the top of the screen, and you can search the grants page for what is upcoming, the order of the soonest deadlines, I should say, across all of the divisions. Something else that you can do if you go to About, and also the About pages, that you can do a search through divisions individually and scroll through all of the different programs that we offer. So in this case, this page happens to be open to the announcement for the Fellowships Open Book Award that I mentioned earlier, which has an August deadline. Next slide. So here, if you've clicked on the grants page, you can see that you can also access the individual divisions and offices right there at the top left corner. Do another grant search to see what's been funded most recently, but looking down the center of the page there for grants, you can search all of those grant programs, as I said. You can search all past awards, also to get a sense of what NEH has funded most recently in those programs that you're interested in, to get a sense of the competitiveness and maybe a sense of the current direction of what NEH has been interested in funding most recently. Okay, next slide. So if you click on a particular grant program, then you'll get all of this information that you need, including the dates for the deadlines, the Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFO, and that's another acronym that we use for guidelines. So guidelines and NOFOs are the same thing. So you'll see what those dates are. You'll be able to access the links not only to the PDF for that funding opportunity, you'll be able to read the FAQ document that we've prepared for you based on a lot of applicants' questions. You'll also be able to see those most recent awards coming from that program over the past couple of deadlines. in recent years. And one of the most important resources, I think, at the bottom you'll see that you can access sample narratives from recent awarded projects that have confidential information redacted, but give you access to the way that applicants have written convincing and persuasive proposals to make the case for their funding, how they've organized it according to the deadline guidelines that they were responding to, and also the general tone, the sense of what they emphasized, how they really emphasize certain themes, certain outcomes, and the relevance of the humanities content that they want, that they really want support for. So there is a lot of information packed into those grant program information pages, and I would encourage you to spend some time going through them closely because there is a lot there that you can access. Next slide. And then this is grants.gov. So as those of you who do have experience of submitting proposals to NEH or any other federal agency such as IMLS perhaps or NEA will be familiar with grants.gov. And so when the guidelines or the NOFOs are up and posted for that coming deadline, beneath the notice of funding opportunity, you'll also see a link to the application package in grants.gov, and you'll have to go there, and that's where all of those applications to us go through. So that's the clearinghouse for that, for every deadline. And so you'll have to go, you can do a keyword search. This is one of the pages for grants.gov. You can search, just do a keyword search, a quick search for NEH, and see what those upcoming packages are. We're awaiting, we've got some guidelines in our division going up today for media and short docs, as George mentioned, and so those application packages won't be posted on grants.gov until our notice of funding opportunity is posted on our website. So those go up simultaneously, and that's when you can access them and really start working on that application if you're someone who likes to start early on those and not wait until the day before the deadline, which we don't recommend. And with this, you'll need to make sure, I would advise you to get in there early and start looking around at those documents and see what you have to do. And a critical piece of all of this is to make sure that you have your SAM registration updated, that if it's due to expire, start the process to get it renewed as soon as possible. And it can take a couple of weeks. Over the past year or so, we've learned that there have been backlogs in SAM and there can be significant delays, so we really do recommend that you start that process early. Another great resource for grants.gov is the helpline. So if you're approaching that deadline and something goes wrong, there's a glitch somehow and you're panicking, call the 24-hour helpline and get a record number for your problem, and that helps you document it so you have more evidence of your attempt to apply. If it's, you know, a half an hour to midnight or that deadline date, and you want to make sure that that everyone at NEH knows you've made that best effort. Okay, next slide, please. So what happens to your application after you have successfully submitted it to grants.gov? Well, at the bottom of the stair, we have your submission, so that's where your application is. And if you look up the steps, you'll see where it goes. And our review periods are about 6 months. Sometimes for applications that come in the spring and early summer, they may go to our November National Council meeting. In that case, the process is about 5 months rather than 6 months. But we have 3 National Council meetings per year. They meet in March, July, and November, most typically. And so that's a little bit up the ladder. When we get your application, we will create panels. We sort them into panels that are roughly organized according to topic and also a category, whether it may be a planning grant or an implementation grant, for example. So we group them together in that kind of way, and we create review panels that include typically 5 people, usually 3 subject matter experts or scholars, and then a couple of practitioners of the field who may be digital designers, conservationists, maybe a curator or museum director or an educator as well. So we really look for a diverse balance of perspectives when we're evaluating those applications. Based on those reviews, we make our own recommendations to our division directors, and in turn, they go for review to the National Council, which is that body of 26 men and women who meet 3 times a year. And during that period, I mentioned that there's about a 5-month review period for the November council meeting, but for the March meeting and the July meeting, that's about a 6-month turnaround. And so if you submit something in August, that means that it will go to the following March National Council meeting. So it can take some time to learn whether or not you've gotten that award. And then it comes to the chairman's decision ultimately. Our chairman, John Parrish Petey, is the person who has the final decision-making power. And all of the process up until that time has really been advisement for him on what are the strongest projects that really support the mission of NEH. And at that point, after the final motions have been signed, you'll hear from us about whether or not you've received that award. Next slide. Some of the best advice that we often share with applicants is to contact a program officer. We can be the best resource for you. You can ask us questions about the grant programs. You can get advice on how to prepare applications. We give feedback on draft proposals. We have a cutoff period before each deadline for some grant programs, and I think that ranges from division to division. So I would really confirm and look at those landing pages on the website to confirm whether or not the division that you're interested in is really reviewing drafts. We can also tell you if your project is most appropriate for our division or the particular grant program that you're interested in. So we can be the best resource for you. And if you turn to the next slide, we've got our contact information there. My name is Jill Austin again, and my email is right there in the middle of the screen, jaustin@neh.gov, and George Lazopoulos' email address is there as well, glazopoulos@neh.gov. And if you're interested in other division programs, as we've said, we're in public programs, so that's what we know best and that's what we do. But if you are interested in connecting with a program officer in one of the other divisions, feel free to reach out to us and we would be happy to connect you with someone there directly. Thank you.
Great, thank you, George and Jill. I will turn off my screen, and if you would like to get your turn on your webcams, we definitely have a lot of questions for you here. And as you're doing that, all right, Jill. General question as we're getting the webcams going. Will we be able to share your slides with the audience? Hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, good. There's a general question. Will we be able to share your slides with the audience or our participants?
It looks like this. We can share the slides. If you're recording this, it looks like you'll also be posting it on YouTube. So will the slides be shared on YouTube as well with us talking over them?
Yeah, well, the recording is going to be the actual webinar, so
okay,
be able to see it like that. Yeah.
I would say if you email us directly, we can share them with you. I don't know that we have a mechanism for posting them if this is a Cal Humanities presentation. Does that make sense, George?
George, we can't hear you. I think you might be on mute. Still can't hear you.
I wonder if can I unmute him?
I'm trying to unmute him right now and I can't do it.
Okay, it says he's self-muted. I would say that's the best course is to email us directly and we can send you the slides that we have. If anyone happens to contact you, John, you could also forward them to us, or feel free to share them that way as well.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right.
Hey.
There's a few questions about deadlines. Where can they find out if the deadline changes for the public humanities grants?
For that one, are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. For that one, you'll just have to keep checking our website. There's really no other way to find out when if that's going to change. Right, Jill? I don't know if I'm forgetting something.
Yeah, the other thing you can do is follow us on Twitter at NEH Public Programs. And so that's where we will, as soon as they go up, we'll have the deadline announcement as well as that full NOFO. So you can check both ways.
Yeah.
Great. And another regarding deadlines, since the submission date for media arts is August 12th, will current applicants hear if their pending app is approved by then?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Sure.
I'm not sure that if it's approved, I mean, if it's selected for an award.
I think that's the question, yeah. The question is, will current applicants hear if their pending app is approved by the August 12th submission date?
Oh, if they have submitted something at the March deadline or the January deadline, you mean?
I'm not sure. Pablo, if you'd like to follow up with a question in the chat, please you can go ahead and send a message to Jill and George about that. Or to, yeah. Are there a limit on how many grants you can apply for?
There's not really a limit. You actually are allowed, one applying institution is allowed to apply for even more than one grant, provided that the work that you're asking for support for is separate and distinct in each of the grants. So there can't be any double dipping for the same actual tasks across awards. But no, there is no limit. I will say though, if you apply for more than one award, at that point you're competing against yourself. And often not often, but what does sometimes happen is in those cases when one applicant is approved for 2 awards, sometimes an adjusted amount is offered for both. That has happened in the past. But I don't think there's an actual limit, right, Jill?
No, there isn't.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. Regarding the documentary film grants, there's a question: would augmented reality fit under documentary film?
I don't think so, right, Jill? We have a separate grant category that we didn't talk about because the deadline isn't until June, so it just passed. But we have a grant category in public programs called Digital Projects for the Public. And one of the formats that grant does support is virtual reality experiences. So I encourage this question asker to go to our website and to look at the information for that grant, or to contact me or Jill, and we can get you more information about that. But yeah, not the media projects. It's a separate project, separate grant category.
Okay, great. There's numerous questions about what is SAM. SAM
stands for System Award Management. It's a government, what would you call it? Sort of mechanism for keeping track of applicants and the grants they receive. I don't know how else to explain it. You get assigned a unique number, and that's your identity within the federal grant award making system.
It's kind of, excuse me, it's kind of like a partner number with your DUNS number. For example, your nonprofit registration. So it's, I've heard rumors that the DUNS numbers are going to be discontinued at some point, and SAM will be the primary number. But typically you need to have that, you need to apply for SAM as a nonprofit to be able to apply for any federal grant. And if you don't have one and you're interested in applying for federal grant sometime soon, you should do that now. You always have to watch. I think they have to be renewed every year. So you have to go through that process every year. And like I said, there's been a backlog, and it can be stressful if you realize that your SAM number is expiring and you're ready to submit. So I would, get that through as soon as possible.
All right, great, thank you. Regarding evaluation, how will evaluation of humanities discussions under the public humanities projects be recalibrated in the COVID-19 context?
That's a really great question. I would just like to say, I apologize if you can hear the background noise. There's some drilling going on in one of the other units in my building, so pardon that. There's nothing I can do. I just started. So George, I know that you've been working on the public humanities projects this time around. Do you have any updates? I will say the question came up today. A couple of us were chatting by email about what's going to happen with that. What do we do?
Yeah, to my knowledge, the discussion is going on about what to do to accommodate, the new arrangements that we have to deal with COVID-19. But as of right now, in the forthcoming guidelines for that grant, I don't think there is any specific instruction for that. So I apologize for that, but it is, I can promise you, something that we are talking about and trying to strategize for. Just stay tuned is the best I can tell you.
I would just add, if I may, that I think if we're because you're submitting a proposal for August that would be reviewed in March, and you would find out maybe late March or early April for projects that would begin in the spring. We've all been trying to be as flexible as possible to try to anticipate what the world will be like and what our institutions will be like and where people will be. And I would say if you get close this summer of really being concerned about that, I would maybe write in a plan, maybe a fallback plan to say, well, if we're not able to host these in person, we're planning to do some online conversions, for example, just in case. I know our guidelines don't speak to it directly, but I think we do need to have a conversation over the next couple of weeks about how we will address that. And I think the best thing to do just for the time being is maybe to just say that you're thinking about it, you're aware of it, and you'll address it if you need to.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. There's a couple of questions asking how you define small institution regarding the preservation grants.
There is a budget limit, I believe. It may be $1 million for an operating budget. I should check that. I don't have that figure in front of me immediately. I would go to the Preservation and Access page and take a look at the guidelines that are existing. I'm not sure if those guidelines have been posted yet for 2021, but you should check on that. It's really about budget maximums in that case. So I would look and talk to a program officer there if you're not sure.
Okay, great. Another question regarding eligibility. Would you say community-based art house cinema fits into any of the categories, or indie theaters trying to provide free culturally relevant film programs out in the communities?
I think that the way we would make the distinction is by the type of project they're proposing. I don't think, well, first of all, any applicant for our media grants has to be either a 501c3 nonprofit or a state or local government entity or an educational institution. So if this particular art house cinema is a for-profit enterprise, it wouldn't be eligible. That's number one. Number two is, say they are eligible. If they are proposing the screening of films with some kind of public programming audience interface with it, whether it's discussions or some kind of curated presentation that's grounded in scholarship, and that is built around humanistic themes, that might be something that we would consider. But if this question asker has a specific project in mind, I encourage that person to get in touch with us directly to talk about it.
Okay, great. And regarding the 501c3 and eligibility, are fiscally sponsored organizations eligible for the grants?
Yes, especially in media projects. Most of the applicants that want to come into us are independent filmmakers, which we do not support individuals in public programs. Other divisions do, especially research. But to come into public programs for a media grant, it's very, very often the case that an individual filmmaker will partner with the fiscal sponsor, and that fiscal sponsor will be the applicant of record.
Okay, great. Regarding media grants, when you say production grants, does this include post-production?
Yes, it does. Post-production is eligible for support, even if the film is already the footage has been shot. An applicant can request post-production funds.
A few more questions. Actually, there's a lot of questions, and I'm gonna propose. Can Jillian and George, can you see the questions that have been asked?
No.
Okay, so I'll change your settings so that you can hopefully see it, and then we could answer questions that way. And also, we'll have more time at the end to ask some questions too. Let me see if there's a question about the bicentennial theme. They mentioned that they're worried that it might seem like it's very limited to very colonial American perspective. As a Native American person, they are interested in applying, but wonder how the theme limits the scope of projects.
It's being very widely interpreted. I don't think I can understand why it's perceived that way, but it is not at all limited to the colonial American period, or definitely not excluding Native American history. Anything that interprets the American experience generally gets at the questions of what it means to be American, where the country has been and where it is going. Even things about the future, I think, are technically eligible if they speak to these questions. So we take a very, very kind of wide, interpretation of the meaning of what is America with this initiative. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and the chairman, I don't think this is an outright encouragement anymore necessarily. Oh.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, sorry. So I think that we have had an ongoing encouragement for Native American and Indigenous projects, and I think that that those kinds of topics and that kind of history is something that the chairman himself is very interested in. So I think he does welcome projects that do address that dynamic and that tension and that history, frankly, within this within this broader initiative.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Jill and George, I did create you, shifted you to organizers. Can you now see the questions panel in your dashboard?
Let's see. Yes, I've got it.
Okay, so Felicia and I will move into the California Humanities portion of this webinar, and then we encourage people to keep on asking questions, and Jill and George can answer those through the panel. And then we can have more time at the end also to answer some more questions. Does that sound good?
I'm trying to see if I can see, I don't know that I can see all of the questions.
Mm-hmm.
But George, if you can see the questions,
yeah, I can.
It's not really working for me fully.
Okay. Let's see.
Over on the right side of the dashboard, there's a little pin icon. If you click on that, it'll expand the questions box.
I have it expanded. I'm just not able to scroll. I'm not able to scroll through the entire set of questions for some reason. So I'm seeing ones that were already asked. I'm seeing ones that we've already answered and asked.
Oh, I see.
There's
That's
also
very
a box
odd.
where you could click off the show answer
Okay.
questions. Yeah.
I think I'm seeing more of them now. We are having, I will say, I just found a question, so I'll just answer it.
Yeah.
The question about will we have more detailed webinars for the media documentary specifically? And I'm happy to say we have one scheduled for July 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And that is really to discuss in more detail the media projects guidelines and the August deadline. So we do have that. I don't think we've posted that on Twitter yet. We do have to announce that. I think we were waiting just to make sure that the guidelines would actually go up. So again, if you would like us to send you the link to that when it is available, you can certainly email us, and you could email me directly because I'm the organizer for that webinar, and I can get you the link when it's ready. And then I would also follow us again on NEH public programs Twitter page as well, to make sure, because when we are able to announce it, we will. But that'll be it's about an hour, roughly an hour program. We usually do a half an hour presentation and then a half an hour for questions. So yes, please attend.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. So we're going to shift over to Felicia and our presentation regarding California Humanities. So Jill and George will still be online with us, webcams off, and then we'll be answering some of your questions along the way. And then we also will have transcripts of these questions, and we can share them after the webinar also.
Okay, great.
All right, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, wonderful. So we're going to talk about the grant programs for 2020. Again, I'm John Nguyen-Yap, Outreach and Advocacy Manager. Felicia, would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Felicia Kelley, Project and Evaluation Director.
All right, so if you haven't heard of us before, we're California Humanities. Hopefully you know of us already. If not, here's a little bit of background on us. We are an independent nonprofit organization affiliated with the NEH as one of the state councils, as George had mentioned earlier. We were founded in 1975 as a grant-making organization, and we also create and manage programs of our own. Over our 40-plus year history, we have supported and developed a wide range of work, including community-based history programs, youth programs, statewide reading and discussion programs, and Academy Award-winning documentary films and other media products. We serve the entire state of California. Most of our projects and grant programs are of a statewide scope. We have a wonderful set of board of directors across California in different disciplines. And currently we have a staff of 11 people in 2 offices, Oakland and LA, and we also have other remote staff. Today, so California Humanities generally grants an average of $1 million annually to nonprofit organizations, state and local government agencies, public and private educational institutions, and fiscally sponsored media makers and other independent cultural workers. The highlighted URL is where you'll find access to information about all of our funding opportunities. Today, we're going to talk about 3 current grant programs: the California Documentary Project Program, which has numerous lines that supports film, video, and new media projects. And we'll also talk about the Humanities for All grant programs, both quick grants and project grants. And also our Library Innovation Lab program, which is a hybrid grant and professional development program for California librarians. So first, we're going to start off with California Documentary Project, CDP, as we commonly say. Since our inception in the mid-1970s, we've supported documentary media products in order to make humanities learning experiences available to all Californians. Many of the projects we funded have secured wide distribution and viewership and secured critical and scholarly acclaim, and I'll share an example of one of those later today. This California CDP supports film, audio, and digital media projects that, one, seek to document California in all of its complexity, that it uses the humanities to provide context, depth, and perspective, and also reaches and engages a broad and diverse audience through multiple means, including public and educational screenings, presentations, broadcast, distribution, and online. And so there are 3 lines grant lines to share about CDP. First is the Research and Development Grant. They're designed to strengthen the humanities content and approach of documentary media productions in our earliest stage. It's kind of like a seeding or helping people get off the ground in a sense. The grants are up to $10,000. There's a 1-to-1 match that's required. And we'll share a little bit more about what that match means. It requires at least 3 humanities advisors. And again, we'll share a little bit about what humanities advisors mean for us. And the next deadline is November 2nd, 2020. The production grants go up to $50,000, also requiring a 1-to-1 match, requiring at least 2 humanities advisors, with the same deadline as November 2nd, 2020. And CDP production grants are designed to strengthen the humanities content and approach of documentary media productions and help propel projects towards completion, so towards the end, trying to get them past that finish line. And finally, there's the Next Gen grants that grants up to $15,000, also requires a 1-to-1 match. This one requires only 1 humanities advisor, and the next deadline is March 2021. And we actually just announced our 2020 grantees just a couple weeks ago. The CDP Next Gen grants are designed for youth media organizations in support of emerging California media makers aged 18 and under. Emphasis is on organizations that have existing or have capacity to create programs to train and support young media makers, especially with a documentarian perspective. Not so much on individual media makers that are under 18. Also, this grant is also emphasizes different media. So that could include film, digital, web-based, and audio, including podcasts. And then also the link down here, if you look at the funding opportunities link, that's where you can also find more information about the CDP grants. And so this is an example of one of our recently funded films and how that recently was broadcast. It's actually available on Netflix. It's available now. I was about to watch it the other day, but fell asleep. This is a documentary about the representation of transgender people in the media. Why this stood out was that it had significant California-related content. It highlights stories of individuals and social and cultural history very important to Californians. So we encourage you to watch it if you have Netflix. Okay, and I'm going to ask Felicia to come on and talk about our other grants.
Okay, thanks so much, John, and great to have so many of you with us today. It's such a pleasure to have this opportunity to share this information with you. Okay, so now we're going to look at our Humanities for All Grants program. This is a program that supports a broad range of public-facing humanities projects that engage Californians and others through humanities-centered learning experiences that take place outside of school settings, and that really allow Californians to participate in knowledge production as well as consumption of knowledge. So this program has been around for 4 years now. We can go to the next slide, John, when you get a chance. And just want to give you kind of an overview here of, generally speaking, the types of public programming, public humanities programming that are employed by grantees. So many different types of public humanities programs that are probably familiar to you, also that are supported by NEH, exhibits, lectures, performances and discussions, community-wide reads and other types of book and film-based cultural programming, knowledge production activities such as oral history projects, story collection and sharing programs, projects that involve people, community members in producing knowledge and recording and sharing community-based stories. All of those are appropriate for this grant program. And again, with Humanities for All projects, I just want to underscore that with all of these, we have a very strong interest in projects that show potential to reach audiences that are new and or underserved or have been in the past with humanities programming. Okay, the Humanities for All grant program has 2 tracks. So we encourage you to review the guidelines carefully and make a determination about which level of funding is most appropriate to the scope and scale of the project activities that you want to undertake. There are, as with NEH, there are lists of previously funded projects and sample grant proposals on the website that you can review, and that will kind of give you a little better sense of the funding landscape for each of these tracks. But as you can see, we have 3 deadlines a year for the quick grants. The next one is coming up in October, and 2 deadlines a year for project grants. The next one is coming up very soon in August. And again, you can find information at that URL at the bottom of this slide. Okay, this slide is a screen capture from a recent blog post. We just made the awards for the February deadline a month ago. So please visit our website and review the list of funded projects. This is a wonderful, beautiful image from a project that was funded this round, the Museum of Contemporary Art in San Diego, which is organizing a retrospective exhibit and public programming series focused on the work of California Chicana feminist artist Yolanda Lopez that will launch in 2021. And this is interesting because it's a museum-based project that also involves a lot of partnerships with community and academic institutions in the San Diego area, both K through 12 as well as higher ed institutions. And it's kind of, very traditional humanities program, I think, in the sense that it's really focused on understanding expanding understanding and appreciation of the arts and the social and historical context in which art and creative production is undertaken, and the relationship between art and society. So this is, I think this is a pretty representative example of the kinds of projects that are funded through this grant program. Okay, the third program we just want to share briefly with you is a special program that is intended for the California library community. This program, Library Innovation Lab, launched in 2017. It's now entering its 4th year. And this is a kind of hybrid grant professional development program for a cohort of programming librarians or library workers that enables them to work together over the course of 9 months to research, plan, implement, and assess a new innovative public humanities program in their library that will engage a target group of immigrants or immigrant populations in their community. Participants develop skills, gain confidence, make connections within their communities as well as with colleagues across the state, and a $5,000 grant to each participating library provides some risk capital for experimentation and innovation with new types of programming. So on the next slide, you can see some more visuals kind of illustrating the types of programming outputs that various participants have produced over the years. Very, very rich, diverse range of public humanities programs that, again, really respond to the interests and needs of immigrants in the specific communities where the libraries are located. You can find information about this program at the Library Innovation webpage, and this program has an annual deadline. The next one will be in March of 2021, and we'll be posting more information around the turn of the year. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so here we're going to step back up a couple of levels, you know, take a broader overview of all of our grant making programs. So, you know, these are some things that are common, I would say, to all of our grant making programs. You know, one thing to keep in mind is that all of our grant making is focused on supporting projects, not, you know, it's not general operating support, it's not individual support for humanities practitioners or artists. It is about supporting public humanities projects. So just, you know, keep these things in the back of your head as you're thinking about whether the work that you're doing is eligible for support through our grant programs. But generally speaking, these are the types of factors that are, you know, that are relevant. So, you know, obviously humanities-centered projects, projects that show sensitivity to the target audiences and their needs, both in terms of content as well as format and program delivery, capacity and feasibility considerations, and, you know, a level of ambition, but also realism about what can be accomplished within the scope and scale of the resources available over the life of the project. Lots of details are available in the guidelines and frequently asked questions, so you will find many more details about this when you follow up by reviewing those and or contacting staff. Okay, next slide. Application eligibility. Again, this is really important to keep in mind. We support projects, but applications must be submitted under the auspices of a nonprofit organization or state or local government entity. Organizations such as public universities, libraries, or museums are considered government entities and eligible to apply. And here are some other criteria. I think these are very similar to NEH's criteria, so we won't spend a lot of time on this. But you know, it is essential that the organization has tax-exempt status. Individuals can only apply under the auspices of a eligible fiscal sponsor that meets the criteria. Applicants should not have an active grant or pending application unless they are approved as multi-project fiscal sponsors, such as colleges or universities. And again, there's a lot more detail about all of this in the guidelines. If you have specific questions, of course, feel free to follow up with us. Okay, next slide. The application process for all of our grant programs is online. Every program requires completion of an online application form, which is kind of analogous to the old paper cover sheet, but you know, generic information about the applicant organization, the project, that kind of thing. All programs require a proposal narrative. The specifics will vary according to each program. And all programs, of course, require a completed budget form and budget narrative. And then depending on the specifics of the grant program, other items may be required, such as work samples, a timeline. If your project is being fiscally sponsored, you will need to complete an MOU. And in some cases, you have the opportunity to provide support materials such as letters of support or documentation of past programming that will support your application. Okay, next slide. These are some general application tips, many of which, of course, are applicable to all of your grant-seeking activities. You want to make sure that your project is a good fit with our guidelines and funding parameters. Please make good use of all the resources that we offer. We always do webinars before each grant deadline. We offer one-on-one advisement by program officers. We have sample funded proposals and budgets available for you to review, lists of previously funded projects, frequently asked questions. So there's just a wealth of information available to grant seekers. You know, very general points. Obviously, don't wait until the last minute to start. Unexpected technical or other difficulties may arise that you need to take into consideration. Be sure to follow the guidelines and the format that is outlined, using the appropriate templates if provided for budgets or timelines. Always, you know, allow plenty of time to review, edit, and proof your narrative and check your budget calculations. We always recommend that you have somebody else read your application and give you some feedback before you submit, and make sure that your application package is complete, of course, before you click that submit button, because once you do that, you won't be able to go back and modify it. Okay. So in terms of the review process, generally speaking, we have two broad categories here: quality and capacity. All of the review criteria are outlined in the program guidelines for each program. We try to be very, very transparent about this. We have a multi-stage review process. It varies from program to program, but generally involves peer reviewers who would be humanities field practitioners who have comparable experience with the particular grant program. Board members and staff also play roles in making the selections. The degree of competitiveness varies from round to round and program to program, but generally on average over the past few years, it's been about hovering at about the 15% funding rate. So the timeline or schedule for notification awards will vary by program. Every applicant will be sent an email notification informing them of their status. We are happy to provide reviewer comments to all applicants, whether or not you were successful. We do welcome revised, resubmitted applications, obviously depending on the timing and feasibility on your part, if it's possible for you to reapply. And the schedule of disbursement of grant funds will vary by program. With some programs, it's all up front. With others, it's staggered. So you just have to look at the guidelines in a little more depth for that information. And then finally, we just want to close by, just reiterating that these are grants. They are not gifts. We do expect people to follow through on the activities that were outlined in their approved proposals. We ask that you become familiar with the grantee requirements outlined in your award documents. We have orientation sessions for all new grantees. Staff are always happy to answer questions and help awardees through the process. If you do need to make any major changes to your approved project, we have procedures for doing that. So, that's possible. But another thing that's really important to us is to ensure that all grantees are aware that they are obliged to acknowledge both California Humanities and the National Endowment support in all public programming and publicity materials and on any work products such as documentary films or media products that result from your grant. We also ask that you keep us informed about public programming activities so that we can help you publicize these. Illustration being that slide we just showed you about the disclosure documentary. We love to share information about the activities of our grantees and help you build an audience for your projects. So we do require a final report for all grant programs. Some programs also require an interim report. So just be mindful of the reporting requirements, you know, at the time that you're applying and what will be expected of you. Matching contributions are required for some grant programs, but not all. Although we do ask that everyone submit a final budget regardless of whether the match is required. Okay, so I think the next slide just has the staff contact information. I'm the point person for our Humanities for All project grants and Library Innovation Lab. My colleague John Lightfoot for anything CDP related, and my colleague Lucena for the Quick Grant project. Deborah White is our grants manager. If you have any technical questions about the application, the DUNS number, the SAM registration, anything of that nature, how to access the application portal, again, we try to be as transparent and explicit about this in the guidelines, but if you do have any questions, feel free to contact Deborah regarding those matters, and program officers for substantive or content related questions. Okay, so thank you. Back over to you, John. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pitch you questions as they come along. And as I failed to mention that we will provide these slides to you in our follow-up email, as well as a link to the webinar once we have it uploaded to YouTube. So we have about 10 minutes left, and we do have some questions specifically for us, Felicia, so we can get through some of them. Before I queue those up, can you share a little bit more about what Humanities Advisors are and what kind of matches are required?
Okay, yeah. So yes, many of the grant programs require the involvement of a humanities advisor, and this is a person who can really provide support to the project as it develops about, it could be primarily about subject matter or content related issues. You know, so depending on the particular content of your project, what topics, what subjects you're focusing on, the advisor might be an academic scholar, somebody has expertise in a humanities discipline that's relevant to your project. They could be a humanities practitioner, someone who has a more practical knowledge base that's relevant to your project, such as experience doing oral history or other types of qualitative research, interviewing, ethnographic research, documentary filmmaker, an archivist, a museum curator, journalist who's written, produced public-facing work about a topic or subject related to your project, or they could be a culture bearer, somebody who is steeped in the knowledge, the wisdom, the lore of a particular community, whether it's a particular tribal group or perhaps an occupational group or a neighborhood, geographic community that you want to explore through your project. So we are very ecumenical, I would say, about who qualifies as a humanities expert. They do not have to be an academic scholar. Bottom line is we're looking to see that you have the support that you need to really make your project high quality learning opportunity and experience for the people, the publics who will be participating in it. I hope that, does that help?
There's a follow-up there actually. Jill, could you share if the humanities advisor, or what the definition of humanities advisors are for NEH?
Yes, they are very similar. We are looking for a diverse group in terms of specialty and perspective. So we're looking for a range of people. I did answer one of the questions about partnerships and a single institution, and I would say projects that really bring in people across institutions are stronger than ones that really put together a group of advisors within the sole institution of the university. So we're also looking for at least a couple of tried and true PhDs who are scholars at universities. So we do need a couple of traditional people who do represent their own specialty as it pertains to the topic. And we do welcome community scholars, elders who are, who know the history and live it. But aren't a kind of traditional or conventional scholar in that way, but you must have a mix.
Great, thank you. Felicia, can you share how we handle matches, or what we define as matches?
Yeah, so for the question of match on your budget, what we're looking for, and again, this is with some of the programs, but not all, is that by the end of the grant period, so the match doesn't have to be in place when you apply, but by the end of the grant period, we want you to have a reasonable expectation at the time that you apply that you will be able to come up with resources, which the value of resources, which can be either cash or in kind, that are going to be contributed to your project, either by your institution, individuals or other entities in the community. Could be from, businesses, nonprofit partners, contributions from other funders or individual contributions that match at least an equivalent value of the dollar value of the grant that you're awarded. So if you receive a $5,000 grant and you are required to match that, we expect you to to show by the end of the project that you have assembled at least $5,000 in cash or in-kind contributions to the project from local non-federal sources. So the idea here is that we want to be able to demonstrate that the funds, the re-grant funds that we're dispersing that are coming to us from the National Endowment, the federal funds are being matched by local contributions. Of course, your project budget may be much bigger than the award plus the match. In many cases, can be, fivefold or tenfold larger. But a bottom line is that award must be matched.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. And so I'm seeing a lot of questions. I think that there are many answers to some of these questions in the guidelines and FAQs that our program officers and grants manager have painstakingly update every grant round, including information about SAMs, including information about budgets and indirect costs like at universities or organizations, a little bit more about humanities advisors. So I'm going to defer those questions to the guidelines and FAQs that we have on our website, but I also encourage you to contact Felicia or any of our program officers if you have any of those questions. I'm going to throw out this question to Felicia, Jill, and George. It said, how do you as a grant seeker circumvent the racist biases of grant maker personnel and along with their theft of your projects? I'm not sure about what we could answer about the theft of the projects. I think that's more of a direct example or specific scenario, but how do you basically have a more equitable review process for grant making?
Well, I mean, I can jump in here. I would just say that, you know, in all of our grant making at California Humanities, we strive to be as transparent as possible. That's why we give very explicit, you know, kind of direction about how to construct your application as much as possible to level the playing field among all applicants. We try not to leave anything mysterious in terms of review criteria. You know, just saying for myself, being involved in organizing reviews and panels, we strive to have diversity of perspectives on our among our reviewers, our panels. Obviously, you know, we have limitations in terms of budget and timing. We would love to be even more inclusive than we can, but that is, you know, that is definitely a huge factor in terms of the review, is making sure that as much as possible we have a diversity of perspectives and viewpoints looking over the applications and deciding on the awards. You know, what else? I would also say we have a explicit commitment to equity at California Humanities, and I would say, especially, you know, in the current you know, moment of history that we're in, this is, you know, obviously of special importance to us to make sure that we are doing everything we can to be fair, equitable, and inclusive in our grant making activities, as well as everything else that we do.
Thanks, Felicia. Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, for us, we operate with the intention of a diverse review, and it starts certainly with the review panels, and we look for diversity in terms of experience and expertise, and those specialties from the experience or the practitioner side as well as the scholarship side. But when we put those panels together, we're also looking for diversity in terms of geographic location, type of institution, gender, race, you know, so we're really looking to put together as diverse a panel as possible. And that also depends on who says yes, you know, so we have to really, we work hard to put together people who are available, who can do the work and give it the attention, but it's always something we strive for. We also have a range of perspectives and input from those 26 people who serve on the National Council for the Humanities. And those people serve terms, you know, that rotate. They range from about a 2-year to a 4-year term. And within all of that, we are bound to the charter from 1965. So ultimately, the chairman reserves the right to make all of the final decisions, and that has been bound into our operations from the beginning. So it's kind of like it's the applicant's job and our job and the panelist's job and the National Council members' job to really convince the chairman of worthiness, as well as that it's a sound and strong humanities project that's rooted in the scholarship, and that it's going to get to people and really have an impact. And so we're all working toward that goal, and I think the chairman always keeps that in mind as well. But we are also bound within our charter and our guidelines that we cannot use our funds to support projects that are primarily rooted in social advocacy or take a particular partisan or policy position. and or rooted in political positions. So we have to really pay attention to that closely, and it can certainly affect our future funding and then the access to everyone else's funding when the use of our funds comes under scrutiny, as it does with different administrations. So we are bound to make sure that humanities are at the core, and that certain messages of social action are not at the core. So that's also a tricky part of our process that we grapple with.
Great, I appreciate that response, Jill and Felicia. So we are at our time, and we have a lot more questions, so we won't get to all the questions. I had a quick review. A lot of those questions can be answered in some of the FAQs and the guidelines that are both at the NEH and also at our webpage, our California Humanities webpage. But I'd like to close out. I will send out slides that we can send out once we upload the webinar. I'll get that link and also include it in our email. And then I'll have the transcripts, and I'll include as much information from this webinar as I can in that follow-up email. I'd like to thank George and Jill and Felicia for spending this time with us this morning to share information about the grants that are available. Are there any parting words that you'd like to share before we close out?
Well, thank you so much. This is Jill. It's been really great to join you all, and I've tried to respond to as many of the questions as we can. I would also encourage you to email me or George at our email addresses. Mine is jaustin, AUSTIN at NEH.gov. That's an easy one to remember, and I see I've already got some emails coming in with some questions from people who want to attend our media projects webinar that's coming up. So feel free to get in touch with us.
All right, thank you. All right, so with that, I will say thank you from California Humanities as well, and for Felicia, and please contact us if you have any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.